As the Vorax fleet hovered in the silent expanse of space, Earth's fate was sealed in the minds of the alien commanders. They had studied countless species across the galaxy, and each one had fallen easily to the Vorax's technological might. What made Earth different? Nothing, they assumed. A primitive world still stuck in the throes of its industrial age. No alien weapons to speak of. No alliances to bolster their strength. Just a blue planet teeming with insignificant life. From their flagship, the Pax Nihilus, Lord Horth, the supreme commander of the Vorax Armada, stood at the helm, gazing out at Earth. His fleet was ready for a swift and unchallenged assault. "Prepare the extermination protocol," he ordered coldly. "There will be no survivors." Beneath him, his officers scrambled to carry out the orders. They'd be landing on Earth's surface within the hour, their weapons capable of leveling cities in minutes. Any human resistance would be crushed beneath their boots. Humanity was nothing more than a nuisance to the grand scheme of Vorax expansion. It was a simple conquest, a mere prelude to a much larger galactic campaign. But what the Vorax hadn't accounted for was the ingenuity of the humans they considered so backward. Maya Lopes was only a teenager when her life intersected with Earth's fate. A gifted computer hacker with an insatiable curiosity, she had spent countless hours on underground forums, hacking government systems for thrills, until one fateful night when she discovered something that would change the course of history. It started innocently enough. She cracked into a secure Vorax transmission, a harmless task she assumed would lead to another fun exploit. But then, her screen filled with symbols and data streams that made her pulse race. Alien code she had never seen before, complex and powerful. As the data poured in, a horrifying realization struck her. She wasn't just accessing their communications. She was witnessing their invasion plans. Maya's heart pounded. This wasn't a game anymore. Quickly, her hands flew over the keys. She couldn't do this alone. She reached out to a group of like-minded hackers from around the globe. People who had no idea the weight their actions would carry. They worked feverishly, breaking through the encryption, unlocking even more secret transmissions. The Vorax weren't just invading Earth. They were planning a total annihilation. But Maya had an idea, a desperate one. She began to broadcast the invasion plan across all global networks. In mere moments, the message was out. Governments, military bases, news outlets, all receiving the chilling confirmation. Earth was under attack. At that very moment, Lord Horth's command bridge shook with an unexpected jolt. "What is this?" he roared, his alien face twisting in anger. The humans had sent a signal. Earth's defenses had been activated. An alarm echoed across the fleet. Something had changed. This was no longer a simple mission. The first wave of their invasion was already being met with resistance. Humanity was ready, but not in the way the Vorax expected. The battle had already begun. The first wave of the Vorax invasion came crashing down like a tidal wave, their ships breaking through Earth's atmosphere with terrifying speed. Cities across the globe scrambled to prepare, their military forces hastily reconfiguring outdated defense systems. But humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons. It was their ability to adapt, innovate, and unite when faced with impossible odds. The world's governments, once fractured by old rivalries and endless disputes, set aside their differences in a heartbeat. Maya Lopez's broadcast had turned panic into determination. Across the globe, leaders and civilians alike rallied together, their collective will stronger than ever. The human spirit, long underestimated by the Vorax, surged to the forefront. In every corner of Earth, people were doing the unimaginable. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists, all focused on one goal: survival. While the Vorax had technology centuries ahead of Earth's, humanity's refusal to back down became the driving force that pushed them forward. In secret labs and underground bunkers, a small army of brilliant minds worked tirelessly to reverse engineer alien technology. The weapons and systems that had once seemed insurmountable were now being modified, adapted, and repurposed. By the time the Vorax's second wave entered Earth's orbit, the planet's defenses were far more formidable than they had anticipated. Maya, along with a team of elite hackers, infiltrated the Vorax communication systems once more, sending out false signals to confuse the enemy fleet. At the same time, Earth's military forces launched coordinated attacks using repurposed Vorax tech. The human-made weapons were crude by comparison, but they were effective. Small, calculated strikes against the Vorax ships started to destabilize their defenses. In one remarkable battle over the Atlantic, a fleet of Vorax cruisers found themselves outmaneuvered by a fleet of human-designed aircraft, now equipped with laser-guided weaponry scavenged from the wreckage of the first Vorax assault. The Vorax, stunned by the speed and effectiveness of the attack, couldn't keep up. For the first time in their history, they were forced to retreat, not by a superior weapon, but by a species that refused to accept defeat. But the true turning point came when a human scientist named Dr. Amelia Keller, a physicist working out of a laboratory in Munich, discovered something extraordinary. Hidden within the wreckage of the Vorax ships, she found a key weakness in the Vorax's energy core, a flaw that could potentially disrupt their entire fleet. She worked day and night, building a device capable of exploiting that weakness. It was a long shot, a gamble. But when the Vorax unleashed their third wave of attack, aimed at wiping out Earth's last remaining resistance, the device was ready. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Vorax flagship, plant the device, and set it off at the right moment. The mission was deadly, and the odds were stacked against them. But for the first time in the battle, the humans had a chance to strike back, not just with weapons, but with the very thing the Vorax had underestimated from the start: human ingenuity. As the battle for Earth raged on, the Vorax fleet, though taken by surprise, quickly regrouped and adapted. The humans' initial success only served to fuel their relentless pursuit of victory. But what the Vorax commanders failed to anticipate was the power of human alliances. The war had taken a new turn. Earth was not fighting alone. In the shadows of the war, a network of alien species, long oppressed by the Vorax Empire, began to emerge. They were the lost, the forgotten, the enslaved, beings who had once served the Vorax as subjugated labor and soldiers, but whose spirit had never been fully crushed. The first to make contact was the Kiteri, a species of agile, telepathic beings whose planet had been colonized and exploited for centuries. Their message, broadcast across the galactic void, reached Earth through a pirate transmission network. "We are the Kiteri," their voice echoed, distorted by static but full of conviction. "We are here to help. The Vorax will fall, and we will stand with you." At first, humanity was skeptical. After all, they had never fought alongside an alien race before. But desperation brought them to the table, and in the spirit of unity, Earth's leaders agreed to an uneasy alliance. The Kiteri weren't alone. Soon after, representatives from the Solu, a race of massive, tree-like beings, and the Shesel, a race of bird-like creatures, contacted Earth as well, offering weapons, knowledge, and tactical support. The Vorax, already spread thin with the increased resistance on Earth, now found themselves facing a coalition of races they had long considered inferior. It was a nightmare scenario, one that forced them to adapt in ways they hadn't anticipated. The very species they had enslaved now fought alongside their former oppressors, united under a common banner: to drive the Vorax from the galaxy once and for all. Humanity's role in this newfound coalition was unexpected. Earth's military leaders, initially unprepared for this galactic-scale war, quickly adapted, learning to work alongside their alien allies. Each species brought its own strengths to the table. The Kiteri, with their psychic abilities, could infiltrate Vorax communications and sabotage their military infrastructure. The Solu, towering giants of strength, helped Earth's armies build defenses strong enough to withstand the Vorax's most devastating attacks. The Shesel provided aerial support, scouting the skies and offering an unparalleled strategic advantage. But the most important asset humanity brought to the table wasn't their military might. It was their willingness to adapt and innovate. Time and again, the humans came up with creative solutions to problems that had the Vorx commanders scratching their heads. In one high-profile battle over the South Pacific, Earth's engineers and alien allies combined their knowledge to create a massive EMP device capable of shutting down a fleet of Vorx ships in one fell swoop. The humans had learned from their first encounters, and their ability to think on their feet kept the Vorx guessing. As the tide of war began to turn, Lord Horth, the Vorx Supreme Commander, stood before his fleet, his fists clenched in frustration. His entire empire was now at war, not just with Earth, but with an unexpected coalition of beings. Their initial arrogance had blinded them, and now they were paying the price. "We have underestimated them," Horth muttered, his eyes narrowing. "But we will not make that mistake again." The Vorx Empire, once unchallenged in its dominance, was now on the defensive. For the first time in centuries, their superiority was in question. Earth and its new alien allies had turned the tide of the war, forcing the Vorx to fight on multiple fronts. But this victory was not without its cost. As the war raged on, humanity's cities became the battlegrounds. Vast portions of Earth's surface had already been reduced to rubble, and the toll on the human population was staggering. Entire cities were lost in brutal bombardments from Vorx warships, and while humanity's resilience continued to surprise their enemies, the emotional and psychological toll on the people of Earth was undeniable. Maya Lopez, who had sparked the resistance with her broadcast, found herself haunted by the destruction around her. She'd been a symbol of hope, a beacon for humanity, but as the war escalated, she began to question whether the cost was worth it. Every victory felt hollow when it was followed by more destruction. Entire neighborhoods in cities like New York, Tokyo, and Paris had been leveled. The survivors, who had once rejoiced at their first victory against the Vorx, now faced the bitter reality of their own sacrifices. Amidst the chaos, Earth's leaders made an agonizing decision. In order to buy time for a decisive counterstrike, they would sacrifice entire regions of the planet. They would use their most powerful weapon, one they had been reluctant to deploy. It wasn't a nuclear bomb, but something much more dangerous. A massive EMP that would disable the Vorx fleet, but at the cost of rendering Earth's remaining technology useless for weeks, perhaps months. It was a brutal decision. The EMP would destroy key infrastructure, plunging humanity back into a pre-industrial age. But it was the only way to force the Vorx into retreat, to strike them while they were still reeling from their losses. With no other options, Earth's leaders gave the order. The countdown began. As the EMP detonated, a pulse of energy swept across the world, disabling the Vorx fleet's electronic systems and rendering their advanced weaponry useless. But the cost was steep. Communications were lost, power grids collapsed, and vital resources were cut off. Humanity, in a desperate bid for survival, was now facing a future with far fewer tools at its disposal. But just as Earth's leaders prepared for the worst, a miracle happened. The Vorx fleet, disoriented and crippled by the EMP, found themselves vulnerable. The united human and alien forces launched a coordinated attack, catching the Vorx off guard. In what seemed like an impossible turn of events, the Vorx, who had once dominated the galaxy, were now on the brink of defeat. But victory came at a cost. The alien rebels who had helped humanity fight back had lost countless ships in the battle. The Solu's towering warriors had fallen in droves, and the Shessel's aerial forces were decimated. Humanity's victory, though hard-earned, was stained with the blood of their new allies. As the dust settled over the ravaged Earth, Maya stood at a memorial in a ruined city, surrounded by survivors. The victory was theirs, but it was bittersweet. The cost of freedom had been steep, and the scars of the war would never fully fade. Humanity had proved itself, but at what price? The EMP had succeeded in crippling the Vorx fleet, but it was only a temporary reprieve. Earth's defenses were still fragile, And the Voreks were not a species to admit defeat easily. Their leaders regrouped, vowing to annihilate humanity and its newfound allies. The atmosphere grew thick with the knowledge that the war was far from over. As Earth's forces began to rebuild, Maya Lopes found herself once again at the heart of the resistance. The cost of the EMP had set them back, but the Voreks were still reeling from their initial losses. In the days following the attack, Earth's scientists had worked relentlessly to upgrade their technology, while military leaders began planning the final strike. But Maya knew that the Voreks were too formidable, their empire too vast, to be toppled by a conventional war. Then came the revelation that shifted everything. The Voreks had a secret weapon, one so terrifying that its existence had been kept hidden even from their own ranks. A massive warship, dubbed the Sovereign, capable of obliterating entire planets with a single strike. If the Voreks were to unleash it on Earth, the entire planet could be wiped out in an instant. The Sovereign's core, an unstable energy reactor powered by the life force of an entire population, had been the source of their unchallenged dominance for centuries. If activated, it would create a chain reaction that could destabilize the entire solar system. Maya, along with a handful of elite soldiers, was chosen for the most dangerous mission humanity had ever attempted: to infiltrate the heart of the Voreks fleet and disable the Sovereign before it could be deployed. But the mission was fraught with danger. The Voreks had learned from their past mistakes and had fortified their command ship like never before. It was surrounded by a deadly network of traps and automated defenses. Maya's heart raced as she reviewed the plans one final time. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about ensuring that Earth had a future at all. The team, armed with whatever alien technology they could salvage, made their way through the shadows of space, preparing to breach the Voreks flagship. Their ship, a patched-together vessel constructed from stolen Voreks tech, shuddered as it neared the heart of the enemy fleet. The tension on board was palpable. They knew they were about to enter the lion's den. As they approached the Sovereign, Maya's mind raced. They had one shot. If they failed, the Voreks would have the upper hand once again. But if they succeeded, they could deal a devastating blow to the Voreks Empire, turning the tide of the war for good. When they finally docked on the Sovereign's massive hull, it was eerily silent. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on Maya's shoulders. This was humanity's ultimate gambit, their final chance to end the war. There could be no second chances. She looked at her team, each one of them prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. "We do this together," she said quietly. "For Earth, for every life we've lost." With that, they moved forward, their footsteps echoing in the cold expanse of the Voreks warship, knowing the fate of the entire galaxy rested on their shoulders. The corridors of the Sovereign were a cold, metallic maze, its surfaces slick and reflective, designed not only for function but to intimidate. The Voreks had poured their pride and power into this ship, their last hope for galactic domination. Maya and her team moved cautiously through its corridors, their breaths shallow and rapid, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. Every step was a reminder that failure meant the extinction of their world. The small team of Earth soldiers, joined by a Kateri infiltrator and a Solu warrior, silently advanced, their weapons ready. The Sovereign was enormous, so vast that even after boarding, they hadn't yet reached the core of the ship. As they ventured deeper, the atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. Automated defense drones patrolled the ship, their sensors scanning for intruders, but the humans and their allies were too quick. Using a combination of human ingenuity and stolen Voreks technology, they disabled security systems at critical junctions, slipping past the eyes of their enemy. Maya, though calm on the outside, felt the heat of urgency rising within her. Their goal was the central reactor, a massive core that powered the ship, and, if they were to believe the intelligence they had received, also contained the Voreks' secret weapon, a device capable of unleashing devastation on a galactic scale. They had to destroy it before the Voreks could strike. As they neared the heart of the ship, however, the true scope of the Vorex's power became clear. The walls were lined with an unsettling sight: captured beings, prisoners from countless worlds, their life forces being drained slowly to fuel the Sovereign's reactor. Maya's heart clenched as she saw the faces of the enslaved, alien species that had been subjugated for centuries, their energy siphoned away to power the Vorex's war machine. The Tsolu warrior, Gorak, let out a low growl, his massive hands tightening around his weapon. "These are the ones they enslaved. This ends now," he said, his voice filled with quiet fury. Maya nodded grimly. "We can't save them all. We're here for the reactor. We can free them once this ship is destroyed." But freeing the prisoners wasn't the only complication. As they reached the core, Maya's heart sank. The reactor was heavily guarded, not by mere Vorex soldiers, but by an elite group of Vorex warriors, genetically enhanced for one purpose: to protect the Sovereign's most vital asset. The team quickly dropped into position, taking cover behind towering columns of machinery. A tense silence filled the air as they waited for their moment to strike. The Vorex warriors were formidable, their bodies a fusion of alien technology and brutal strength. But Maya wasn't backing down now. Not after everything Earth had sacrificed. Not after so many lives had already been lost. "On my mark," Maya whispered to her team. They were close, so close. The stakes were higher than ever, and there would be no turning back. If they failed here, all would be lost. Her pulse quickened as she counted down, her mind racing. This was it. This was their one shot. Now, the quiet of the Sovereign was shattered by the deafening roar of battle. The team launched forward, weapons blazing, as they assaulted the Vorex warriors in a desperate fight for the core. Maya's heart was pounding, her mind focused only on the task at hand: destroy the reactor, end the war, and save humanity. There could be no hesitation. Earth's future was riding on their success. The battle at the core of the Sovereign erupted into chaos. Maya and her team fired relentlessly, taking down the elite Vorex warriors one by one, but their opponents were fierce and relentless, their augmented bodies moving with unnatural speed. Every movement of the team was critical, every shot and every action life or death. Gorak, the Tsolu warrior, charged forward, using his immense strength to smash through a Vorex soldier's energy shield. His roar echoed through the chamber as he swung his massive weapon in a wide arc, cutting down the soldiers in his path. But even Gorak, with all his size and power, could feel the strain. The Vorex were endless, a relentless tide of strength and technology. Maya knew they couldn't keep this up for long. "Keep pushing," she shouted, firing her blaster to cover their advance. The others moved in sync with her commands, but the Vorex were adapting faster than expected. They were closing in on the reactor, but every inch of ground they gained came at a terrible price. The Vorex had never been known for mercy, and in this battle, they showed none. Suddenly, the room's lighting flickered, and a massive blast from the Vorex warriors' energy cannons knocked the team off balance. Maya hit the ground hard, the world spinning around her as she fought to stay conscious. She managed to roll behind a steel column, panting heavily. Her thoughts were clear, but her body was screaming in pain. Gorak had fallen too, surrounded by a circle of Vorex warriors. His mighty frame staggered under the weight of his wounds, but he wasn't going down easily. The Tsolu warrior roared in defiance, his weapon raised high for one final strike. "No!" Maya screamed, her voice a raw, desperate cry. But before she could react, something incredible happened. The Carry Infiltrator, a small and agile figure who had been quietly watching from the shadows, stepped into the fray. In a blur of motion, the Carry used its psychic abilities to immobilize the Vorex soldiers, freezing them in place. The mental energy the Carry wielded was raw and immense, more powerful than any of them had realized. "Go! Now!" the Carry shouted telepathically, their voice piercing through the team's minds. Maya, struggling to her feet, nodded grimly. They had one chance to finish this. With the Vorx temporarily frozen, Maya and the team rushed toward the reactor, a colossal, glowing mass of energy that hummed ominously. The countdown to activation had already begun. The Sovereign would soon launch its catastrophic assault. There was no more time to waste. As they reached the core, Maya placed the device, the one Dr. Keller had designed, into a slot near the reactor's base. The device hummed to life, its alien circuitry buzzing in harmony with the reactor's energy. Maya turned to her team, her face grim but determined. "I've set the timer," she said, trying to ignore the pain pulsing through her body. "We need to get out now." But as the timer counted down, the Vorx warriors broke free from the Kateri's hold, and the chamber was soon filled with a renewed wave of violence. Maya's heart raced. She couldn't let the Vorx stop them now. Suddenly, Gorak moved forward, his enormous body shielding Maya and the team. He looked back at her, his face stern. "Go," he said, voice low but firm. "I'll hold them off." Tears filled Maya's eyes. She knew what he was sacrificing. She knew he wasn't coming back. "No, Gorak," Maya protested, but the Solu warrior's expression was unwavering. "I've fought for my people. Now I fight for yours," he replied. With a final roar, Gorak leaped into the fray, holding the Vorx warriors back as Maya and the others sprinted toward the exit. The timer was ticking down. There was no more time. The future of Earth and their alien allies rested on the next few moments. As they reached the ship's exit and launched into the cold emptiness of space, the Sovereign's core erupted in a blinding flash. The shockwave pushed them forward, sending their ship hurtling into space, the destruction of the Vorx flagship, marking the beginning of the end for their empire. The explosion from the Sovereign's core tore through the heart of the Vorx fleet, sending a shockwave that reverberated across the galaxy. The massive warship disintegrated in an inferno of light, obliterating not only the Vorx flagship, but the surrounding ships in its immediate vicinity. For a brief, awe-stricken moment, Earth and its allies watched as the Vorx's overwhelming force was reduced to rubble. But there was no time for celebration. The destruction of the Sovereign had crippled the Vorx, but the remnants of their fleet were still formidable, and the battle was far from over. Maya Lopez, standing with her team on the bridge of their stolen ship, felt a rush of bittersweet relief. They had succeeded in their mission, but the price had been high. Gorak, their mighty Solu ally, was gone, a hero whose sacrifice had paved the way for humanity's chance at survival. The hole his absence left was palpable, but Maya knew that his actions had been the turning point. They could not allow his sacrifice to be in vain. "Signal all ships," Maya ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of what they had just accomplished. "Tell them we have won. The Sovereign is destroyed, but there's still work to be done." The Kikari infiltrator, standing next to Maya, nodded, their telepathic abilities relaying the message to the alien coalition. Across the galaxy, the shattered remnants of the Vorx forces were reeling from their sudden loss. The Vorx Supreme Commander, Lord Horth, stood before what remained of his fleet, his face twisted in fury and disbelief. His empire, once invincible, was now teetering on the brink of collapse. The loss of the Sovereign had shattered their morale, but Horth refused to admit defeat. "Prepare the last of our forces," he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "The war is not over. Earth will pay for this." But as the Vorx regrouped, something remarkable began to happen across the galaxy. The enslaved species, who had once been under the oppressive rule of the Vorx, now began to rise up in rebellion. The Kiteri, the Shessel, the Solu, all the species who had joined humanity in the fight for freedom, now fought with a fury that matched their desire for vengeance. Back on Earth, the cost of victory was clear. Humanity had lost cities, homes, and millions of lives in the struggle for survival. Yet there was a new sense of unity. The human race, once divided by borders and ideologies, had come together to face an enemy greater than any they had known. They had fought alongside alien species who had shared their pain, and now the bond they had forged could never be broken. Maya stood on the balcony of a ruined city, gazing out at the horizon. The sun was rising, casting a warm golden glow over the wasteland below. The world had been forever changed, but in the distance there were signs of life. People rebuilding, working together. For the first time in years, hope seemed tangible. They said we were weak, Maya muttered to herself. That we didn't stand a chance, but we proved them wrong. Her voice was filled with quiet pride, but there was no arrogance in it. What humanity had accomplished wasn't about pride. It was about survival, about standing together in the face of impossible odds. Humanity isn't weak, she continued, her gaze steely with determination. We're stronger than anyone could ever imagine. And the universe will never underestimate us again. As the final remnants of the Orcs Empire crumbled, the galaxy began to turn a new page. Earth, once a backwater planet on the fringe of the universe, had proven its resilience. And as humanity stood united with its allies, they looked to the stars with a renewed sense of purpose. The war was over, but the real work, the work of healing and rebuilding, was just beginning.